The Captain's Log Radio, with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome to the Captain's Log Radio's Captain Jonathan Moss. I got a good friend with me today. This is Matt Burrows. Matt is an angler. He's a tournament angler. He's a friend, a client, a veteran. This dude does it all. And when I have a question about fixing something on my boat, or if we're rigging something or thinking about a new lure, Matt is the guy that I bounce ideas off of. And so good to have him here on the show. He's based out of Oklahoma. Matty B, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So tell me about Oklahoma. Tell me about fishing in Oklahoma and how what are you focused on there? You're the first guest from the Midwest I've had on the show.
So, like right now, there's guys that are probably getting ready for crappie next month, here in a couple weeks. Water's still real cold. It's kind of gross out right now, rainy, misty, cold. I'm not a fan of fishing in the cold, too much, especially because we have Oklahoma wind, which
Yeah.
like my father-in-law is from Quebec, right? And it gets cold up there. And he was out here last year doing some work and working out in the garage. And he comes in, he's like, man, it's cold. Like that wind just cuts through you. So if you're going to fish right now, you got to have some good gear to keep you warm, especially when you're running down the lake. So this, you got to have some good layers. Me, typically, I'll do a little bit of crappie, just kind of from stuff that I've seen on the lakes. I'm like, oh, that's a good spot for crappie because there's a little bit of structure by a dock or something. I don't have live scope. I don't use it. So, using that side scan just to kind of see where they're at, their depth and stuff. And then, like with the kids, throw some minnows on there, if they're just wanting to watch a bobber
Yeah,
bounce around.
I'm not used to fishing, and I call crappie specks. Here in Central Florida, we call them specks. In Louisiana, they call them sockeye.
Yep.
And we have mainly black. Well, I don't say mainly. We only have black crappie, black specks here. Excuse me. In other parts of the country, they have black and white specks
Yep. And hybrids too.
and hybrids. Yeah. And so for
Yep.
me growing up, it was strictly a nighttime deal fishing with minnows. But there are guys right now, over in the St. Johns River who are catching them during the day,
hmm
using jigs, fishing
hmm
around lily pads. They're getting in there to spawn. And so you got these good groups of specks or crappie up around these lilies. You're catching them on jigs, on beetle spins, on minnows,
Oh
on
yeah.
crickets. But I'm not used to that daytime crappie fishery. And one time, and you mentioned forward-facing sonar and using side scan. I use the side scan a lot for black drum. I was doing it the other day. We're driving around the bridges and marking the fish. But one time I was filming a promo for a company, Drive Dry, and I was fishing with the guy. We were bass fishing on a private lake, and he had forward facing sonar, and it was unbelievable. Like he found, I saw the fish, and he goes, "Oh, those
Yeah.
are specks." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"How in the world were you able to do, to dial in there?" But he's seen it so many times, so he threw his jig out, and you can watch it on the screen dropping into the fish, and then he goes, "Oh, no, here it comes!" And one literally, you can watch it lift up and grab that bait. It
Oh,
was
absolutely.
very cool.
Absolutely. Garmin is, I love my Garmins. They're easy to set up. You just, you've got to throw them on there. You don't really have to mess with them. You can tweak them if you need to. But I think they were the first to kind of start doing that.
Mm.
And I've seen some of the video when it first came out and they were like offshore fishing, right? And it was so good, the clarity. He's like, oh, it's a bull shark. Like it wasn't like, oh, it's a shark, it's a bull shark, because all the sharks have they look different, right?
Yeah.
So it's insane. And I don't know, live scope is really cool. I'm kind of iffy on it because I like being able to, I'm so used to fishing and filling the bottom with my rod, with my bait, especially Texas fishing or Texas rig fishing or jig fishing, and kind of figuring out what's going on there. It's some guys use it and they're really, really good at it. They've got baits that are made just for that. because it
Yeah.
reflects the sonar better. I know they use it a lot here for crappie fishing, especially the guides. Because you got clients, you won't get them on fish. You just roll up and go,
Right.
oh, there they are,
There they
and
are.
you just start going after them. I mean, you just smoke them all day.
Now, what's the deal with the tournaments? Are you allowed to use this technology in your tournaments?
Ooh, so there's a big controversy in the bass field. There's guys that are like, no way, that's cheating. There's guys that have the feeling, and I kind of get where they're coming from, where like, hey, if you put them in a tournament without that stuff, they're not going to even place because they've put
Yeah.
so much reliance on it. I forget which tournament series, but they banned it completely for
Mm,
bass.
mm.
Bassmaster, they changed some of the rules. I think you can only have one setup. Like you can't have a hummingbird and a Garmin or a Lowrance. Like it's one, and then you have one screen dedicated to it. You can't have one off the boat. Um, it's kind of there's a lot of guys that are the old school guys. I get what they're saying. Like there's no skill. You're just showing up and throwing and figuring out what they want to eat, and that's it.
Yeah,
So
I think my biggest when we were using it for that filming that promo, we were staring at a screen as opposed to reading the water, fishing the water. We were staring at a screen, and that's weird for me. I mean, I don't do it. I'm not used to it. I don't have that technology on my boat,
I
so I'm
agree.
not I'm not the biggest fan of that. I try to be away from screens as much as I can, and yet I'm still on my phone responding to emails and doing social media and taking calls, and I live with this stupid thing all the
Yeah.
time, right?
Oh,
The
absolutely.
last thing I want to do is go fishing and be staring at a screen. And I can't say that argument is wrong either. Think about these guys. Think about Jimmy Houston, Bill Dance, Hank Parker, the guys, Roland Martin, the guys we grew up
Yeah.
watching on TV, the guys we grew up and learned from. It's like they went fishing.
Hank Parker's pretty outspoken about it. I
Yeah.
remember watching a video or a podcast. I think actually at the Classic last year, they were out here and they had Chris Zaladin. I think that's how you say his last name, and they were kind of doing a thing on a stage with the fish behind them and just kind of chill and talking. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't like it. It's cheating," you know. And I get it. It's a great piece of technology. I think for certain fisheries, absolutely. Especially you got a lot of flats, right? And it's that side imaging work. I like side imaging because you can, oh, there's a pile of rocks over there. It's 30 feet that way. I can kind of bump my trolling motor over, and then I got my down view, and I can kind of see where they're at and go for it. Whereas that live view, it kind of incorporates that, but instead of having
Yep.
it, scroll, it's all live action.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool. I don't know if I'll do it, but hey, a tool's a tool, you
Yeah.
know. Uh,
For me, when I'm bass fishing, I don't have a unit at the front of my boat. The
mhm.
unit's mounted. My Raymarine is mounted in my center console. So when I'm guiding and I'm using side scan, looking for those drum, I'm in the back of the boat. I'm behind the console. I'm usually on the motor, trolling motor's in the water, not on. I'm idling so I can cover water a little bit faster. Um, and then when you find the school, you hit spot lock, you drop your baits. But when I'm bass fishing, I'm in the front of my boat. I don't have anything there. If I'm guiding for bass, I'm only using a down view because I like fishing over grass when I'm bass fishing. I
Oh,
like finding
absolutely.
like 10 feet of water and half of it being grass.
Hmm.
That gives you a place for fish to hide. It gives you a region, a zone for baits to go over the grass, for bass to stage and eat those baits as they're coming by. And then I mimic that using, you guessed it, you know me, using Rapala X wraps
Oh,
or
yeah.
using a DOA swim bait. I love using something that can travel and cause a reaction by going over that grass. And when that's the case, dude, again, I'm not staring at a screen. I'm fishing.
Hmm.
And honestly, I probably shouldn't tell you this. My dad, his boat was built in the 70s. He'll never get rid of it. I'll never get rid of it. It ain't worth anything, so why am I going to get rid of it? But he's got a hummingbird system on there that's been on there my entire life.
Oh,
Like
the flasher.
it's 40 years old. Yeah.
Oh
It's
yeah.
40 years old. So that was the technology that we grew up with. I didn't have that wasn't technology. The only thing we used it for was like I talked about spec fishing tonight. We used it for depth, and we wanted to get on Lake Conway. I know you know that lake well. We'd
Yeah.
get there, looking for a 25 to 30-foot hole. We knew our spots where we'd go to at night, and honestly, you know what we would do is we would count lights on the houses. Okay, so if we go at this angle and we count five houses down, count those
Hmm.
lights, we should be close to that hole. We kind of do that, and then, oh, there's our hole, there's a hole. And then we'd have a marker we throw in the water to kind of hopefully stay in that zone, and you'd kind of sit around it, and then you'd anchor up to it because you didn't have spot lock, and that's how we fished, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
Um, there's some man, I miss the 90s. I grew up through in the 90s. There were so many great things in the 90s. A lot of technology did a lot of good stuff in the 90s, but it was simple.
Hmm.
And I don't want to take away from the simplicity of just going fishing, but at the same time, if it's not against the rules, using the technology that's there is not, I mean, those fish don't have anywhere to hide with that technology.
Oh no, not at all. I think if you incorporate the live view, your side scan, like you can zone in right where they're at.
Yeah.
I've got a few friends up north in New Hampshire. I mean, they slay, especially smallmouth, right? I mean, they slay them with that live scope, and they do very well.
Yeah.
And even before that came out, they were because they're primarily smallmouth up there on the way the lakes are. And there's some good largemouth spots too, but man, you at side view, you just there they are, and you kind of
Yeah.
keep going and use your drop shot or use a jig or something or a crankbait and just kind of there they are. But now at that live scope, you're like, here's my bait, there's the fish. Oh, he's got it. Now I'm gonna hook up.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think my
listen,
only
hey, we are quickly coming up to our first break. When we get Matt back, more fish talk here with the Captain's Log Radio.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. Again, I've got Matt Burrows with me today, good friend of mine, Matty B. Before we continue this conversation, guys, you know it. I want to connect with you on social media, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook at the Captain's Log TV. I've been getting DMs and questions, people commenting on our videos on YouTube, asking me fishing questions. I love it. I love hearing from you. I love when you tag me and I can see the fish that you've been catching out on the water. I love the trophy hunts I've been seeing guys out there shooting ducks and turkey season's coming up soon. So listen, we got to connect at the Captain's Log TV on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Let's talk there. Matty B, dude. Okay, so we got interrupted. We were talking side scan, talking live scope, a little bit of spec fishing. I think about these black drum and these fish. They get in groups. Sometimes they're in 10. Sometimes there's 100. Like it can be a bunch. Some days they're floating up on the surface. I've seen probably 500 up on the surface, and I'm talking 20 to 40 pounders, giant fish. Okay. I wonder how long, how long have these fish been going to these bridges? Because we're finding them in bridges, It's no secret, people would go to Haulover Canal, which connects the Indian River Lagoon to Mosquito Lagoon, and they'd chunk bait, half a blue crab, a jumbo shrimp, a cut mullet. They'd soak that bait and they'd catch a big black drum or a big redfish. That's been the people have been doing that for 50, 60 years. All right. Same with going to the bridges. Guys have been going and anchoring up. Think about before the technology of spot lock, they would throw anchor and they'd chunk bait and they'd sit there for hours and they would catch big black drum, big redfish, a lot of catfish. How long have these fish been circling this bridge, these pilings? And until we had the technology like side scan to find them, to see them, you know, it's like, whoa, like, what is that? Oh, that's a big pile of fish. Throw your bait 30 feet to the left. There they are. Oh, you're on, you're on. Like, that's how it goes. How long have these fish been doing that? And now they can't hide. And I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't have side scan. And I'm seeing my colleagues, competitors, they're friends, but competitors doing the same thing. They're guides, and one of them got a side scan, and they're doing circles. I'm like, what is this guy doing? So then we meet up after, like, what are you doing, man? Oh, I'm finding fish. Oh. And then they see him pulling out of the water, and your client's like, I want to do that. I'm like, yeah, I want to do that too. So it's like, well, I got to make the investment. And yeah, I'm like we talked about in the first segment. You are staring at a screen, but there's no way. I remember vividly. I took my parents to do this, and there's people anchored up by the bridge, and my dad's like, "Are we gonna catch like fish?" And they're not. I'm like, "Pretty much." Like the school might go by them, and they might get lucky. They might sit there all day, and the school might not get within 50 feet of them. But we're actively pursuing them, which is what I like about polling. It's what I like about sight fishing is you're actively pursuing them, but the
Oh
sight
yeah.
fishing is on a screen. It's completely different, but it's still kind of sight fishing. It's weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a weird space, man.
It is. I think too, especially like crappie fishing with, minnows or just bass fishing with minnows. You're like, oh, I know this is a good spot. You throw your bait out there and you sit there and you wait. You know this is a good spot. You know there's fish somewhere in that, you know, little 10-yard, 20-yard square area, but you don't know where in that area. It's almost like grid coordinates, they're somewhere there. It's side imaging. You go, oh, I threw here, but they're actually 10 feet this way and
Yeah,
another 2 feet out, because, a lot of times, unless they're actively swimming bass, they're just kind of hunkered down the grass, just waiting for that something to come by and snag it up.
yeah,
So, which is nice with the, especially grass flats with the side imaging or rocks. You got structure, some trees out there. You can kind of, hey, it's over here. And then you also know you're not going to spook them because they get, boat shy sometimes because they just get hammered constantly. So now, that side imaging, depending on how you have it set up, you can be quite a far away. If you can cast, you got a Johnny Moss cast going, you can
yeah.
make it, right? You hear that thing whip and go, and you can kind of back off of them without spooking them.
I hear that from clients daily. Like, whoa, what was that? How did you do that? How did you cast like that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just casting, bro. I'm just like, right over my head casting,
Oh yeah.
you know? But you're right, man. Again, it goes back to there are days, I've really been thinking about you probably know about it. There's a Wednesday night tournament every week on Lake
Hmm.
Conway. And
Oh
I'm honestly not a fan of the tournament. Reason being is Wednesday night. If I have a charter on Thursday, those fish got hammered on Wednesday,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
then they got hammered Wednesday night till about 11 o'clock. And now I'm out here 7 hours later, 8 hours later, and I'm hammering them again. Like I'm going after them. These fish have gotten beat up. And so you're
Yeah.
really trying to find fish that haven't gotten beat up, which I don't like that tournament. But I've really been thinking about fishing that tournament and really pushing my limits. But then I'm like, man, what are these? I don't have the side scan. I don't have the lot. I mean, I do have a side scan. I don't have the forward facing sonar like some of these guys do. Am I
Yeah.
wasting my time, fishing this tournament? But at the same time, I think about, I just want to get out there and have some fun and just go be a little competitive. And if I place, I place. If I don't, I don't. I just want to go have something to do. Tell me about your tournament thing. Like, how do you prepare for tournaments?
So I started doing John boat tournaments in Florida, actually. My little 17-foot John boat, had my anchors, I had a cooler that was set up as a live well,
Huh.
troll motor at first, and then I got a little 20 horse, I think we had a limit, it was like 40 horses. So I did that, and, I fished a lot growing up, but not like competitively, and I was like, let's push myself a little bit. So started doing pretty good at that. And then we moved up to New Hampshire, and I ended up selling the John boat, and then I got a really old 79 champion and redid that twice because
Is it the green one?
the green one, mean green,
Green machine?
mean green, yeah. So and hooked up with a tournament club, and I liked it because it's more friendly. It wasn't like some of these bigger clubs where like they share no information whatsoever, period. Like I get competition, but like we're all sportsmen. Hey, here's what works for me. I'm very much, if me, if I'm talking fishing, I'll give you everything I got because you're going to catch fish too. And it
Yeah.
may work for you, it may not. And these guys are great. We showed up and started knocking out tournaments. I was getting better and better. And I think Jeremy, okay, you know him. He came out and went fishing with you. We were, I think, 3 years in a row. We were in top five. I think best thing we did was second place for anglers of the year. And I had to learn a lot fishing in New Hampshire. A lot. I had to learn how to fish slow
Yeah.
because it's just fishing slow, and then also, hey, don't soak on this spot. Let's move because I'll work a spot, for 30 minutes if I have to, because I know there's something there, especially the side imaging and the down imaging. Like you can see that they're there. It's just trying to figure out what they want. Prep wise, I always kind of, okay, here's what I know it works, and you got a lot of, you got a few clear lakes up there, but they also have tannic lakes like they do in Florida at that whiskey water, tea water, so I know it works in Florida. I'm like, oh, it's got to work there. And it would. And some of these lakes, just because of work, I didn't have time to go pre-fish, or it was a, 2.5, 3 hour drive. And it makes for a long weekend with the family, especially to try to go out and fish that the whole weekend. And, doesn't always work out. So I'd pull up mapping and just start, okay, I'd get on the Garmin there and look at my mapping there. And I just start plugging points like, hey, this looks good. Might
Mhm.
be fishy, but we'll see when we get out there. And sometimes it didn't work. I'd grab a Texas rig and I'd just start smoking the bank and logs and lily pads and all kinds of stuff like that.
If you're not familiar with bass fishing, a Texas rig is a style of using a worm. Typically, in the way I do it, is I have a bullet weight and it slides, and you can put a stopper on it if you want it. You can
mhm.
put a stopper in front of it to keep it from sliding, and then your hook is in your worm and it's weedless. So you can fish structure and you're really just poking the tip of that hook, the point of that hook into the plastic so that it's weedless, but when you set the hook, it can easily come out. That's
Yep.
a great rig.
I use it kind of, it depends on the situation too, that the stopper, and I think I've shown you this, I'll move
Yeah.
that stopper up the line with like a fluke, and I'll just pop my pole and it makes that fluke kind of do one of these, and then I'll drop, especially if there's grass, you get pockets in grass, and it'll drop and you just kind of wiggle a little bit and that bass will smoke it,
Yeah.
you know.
I didn't use a stopper ever. You were the one who showed me the stopper and that technique. I think we were out on the Butler chain and you showed me
Yeah.
that. I, you know, I grew up using a Texas rig, plastic worm, purple worms. I'd get a 6-inch Renegade was the brand I was into then. Small worm, and that did a lot of good. But I struggle. You said it, fishing New Hampshire, fishing slow. I struggle fishing slow. I like causing a reaction bite. I like working a bait and then boom, they smoke it. And you're oh, like that's the kind of fish I like. Cover and power fishing.
Oh yeah.
I like cover and water. But sometimes it can pay dividends for it to slow down and to really dissect an area. And chances are, if you hook a fish, and we're quickly coming to a break, but if you hook a fish, there might be other fish in that region. There might be
Hmm.
other fish in that zone. I can't tell you how many times I have power pole down or spot locked and just slow down and methodically worked a zone and caught fish. That's fresh and salt water.
It's almost
That
like a
technique,
grid search. You're just
yeah,
back and
that
forth, side
technique
to
can make
side.
all the difference. Hey, so when we get back more from Matty B, Matt Burrows out of Oklahoma here on the Captain's Log Radio.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. We're talking bass fishing. We're talking freshwater fishing out of Oklahoma, but really, we're talking fishing the style of fishing you can do all over the country. Matt's over in Oklahoma. I'm here in Central Florida, and we're using a lot of the same techniques to catch these fish. Matt, let's focus in. We started talking about your tournament scene and prepping for tournaments. How many rods do you normally have rigged up? What does a lineup look like? How does that all play out?
I definitely I'm very comfortable with Texas rig, which I usually run in different styles, like I was saying, with you get your peg on there and you're kind of moving your weight around. So it really depends on the lake. If I've been to the lake, I kind of know use this, use that. So I usually have like three of those set up with similar style baits because sometimes you'll miss them, like a short bite or something. You can grab that and go right back, kind of where you missed them, or maybe a little bit further because they'll swim kind of back to the little hidey hole and they'll just smoke it. And then, you've got some real deep lakes in New Hampshire. And that was a struggle for me to fish in like 50 feet of water.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
like, you don't have that in Florida. You know, you might have 30 feet maybe, and
Yeah.
that's still
And
real
that's
deep.
deep.
And they're
Yeah.
not hanging out there. Especially for smallmouth because you got all those rock out crows. So like Winnipesaukee, if I knew I was going to Winnipesaukee, there's some largemouth areas. I never fished them. I went straight for smallmouth. So I was rigging. I'd have a couple, probably four setups for drop shot with different style, um, like robo worms. They're little thin, worm looks. They've got some other, like the KVD Strike King, the Dream Shot, I think it's
Mhm.
called. Looks kind of like a little bait fish, different colors.
Mhm.
And a lot of times my go-to that spike dip, the
Oh, I
chartreuse,
know it.
and it works. I mean, I would have, if I knew they were biting on a certain color, I'd throw a little bit on there just to see if they'd bite harder on it. And I don't know why it works for me. And sometimes I'd use the
So,
red hooks.
well, one time, and we'll get to the red hooks in a second because I love red hooks, but one time, so Matt is also a client. We've gone fishing on several charters, and Matt and I love having Matt on the boat because you're not fishing with a client, you're fishing with one of your brothers, one of your best friends, and Matt is putting on a freaking clinic, man. I'm not gonna lie. We're fishing the Butler Jade. He's fishing, I'm fishing. I've got my confidence bait, and he's got. I mean, he flew down with his whole freaking tackle box. It was like Bass Pro Shop exploded in my boat. And he's got this rig, he's got this rig, and he's just, he's switching around. And then he finds what he's like, he figures out what they're keyed in on, and he's smoking them. And I mean, it was like 5 to 1. It was stupid. I'm like, I'm the professional over here, and this dude is smoking me. And then he pulls out this spike it. Okay. And I went and talked to these guys at ICAST a couple years ago. Spike it it's like a dye.
Hmm.
And you'd stick your plastic in it and it will give it whatever you put in it will make it chartreuse. And I'm not going to tell you a story about Matt spilling some on my seat and it's staining it. But it came out.
They
It
have
came
a
out. Magic,
remover now, though. I forgot to tell you about
magic
that.
eraser, baby. Woo, came right out. But we had some, you were using like creature baits,
Yeah,
creature
like a
plastic.
crawfish, rage
Yeah.
bug.
So I I had a couple in my, let me back up and say, I don't throw away plastics. Okay. I will let them pile up in the corner of my boat and people will comment on it. But I do that for about a week or two because my kids were getting into my tackle bag and pulling out my DOA swim baits and like breaking them. I was like, bro, no, 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 no. Like, daddy uses those. You can't do that. So I figured out like what I got to do. I got to keep the old ones because you'll get out to, you're fishing a flat and for sure, there's gonna be a puffer fish around, and they're gonna smoke it, and they're gonna bite it in half. They're gonna bite the tail off of it. Happened today on my charter, and so I just take it off. I throw it on the floor, break up a new one, and then when I get home, I got a pile for the kids because they get on the boat every day. I'm like, these are yours. So now they know leave the good stuff alone and eat the bad stuff. Well, we were fishing, and you had a couple of those creature baits that were stained, not stained, but dyed and I was on the lagoon and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. It was really, the water was real stained and muddy. And I threw one of them creature baits in there and a redfish was tailing. It smoked it. And I don't know if it's because I made the right cast, made the right presentation, or maybe that chartreuse tail popped because of that spike it. I don't know. You know, they say if it ain't chartreuse, there ain't no use, but having that extra brightness in a dirty water can really, I think, could help. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had what's a good one I use? The Zoom Brush Hog, the watermelon candy. So you get your green body and you get purple flakes in it. And I've had one, I'll end up cutting like the arms and splitting a little bit and giving it more movement.
Hmm.
And I'll have throw one and get kind of some okay bites with it. And then I'll just dip the legs, the little, floaties there and dip it in there and they're just smoking it. And I
Hmm.
don't know if it's because I can see it better or maybe that's more of it's a reaction thing.
Hmm.
Same with I don't know. It's just uh it works. I catch fish with it. There's some guys I know they don't catch any fish with them.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just how I fish or what.
What do you do for rod reel line setup tournament day? Are you doing straight braid? Are you doing straight fluoro?
I do on my bait casters, I've got braid. I actually, so New Hampshire too, it's not like fishing in Florida. You can run 12, 15 pound fluoro in Florida, especially, because you're yanking these big bass out there. You know, I caught I think it was a 7 pounder in a tournament. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to it. Dying in the well,
Hmm.
which really tore me out because it's good, it's a good bass it's a huge bass up there. Um, you're not catching 5 pounders all the time. You can, but so I had to like dial my line down to like 10 pounds, which I was like, 10 pounds, that's not what I'm used to. So a lot of it was like 20 pound braid to 10 pound fluorocarbon. And then on my drop shot rigs, my buddy that's really good with smallmouth, it's like, hey, you need to go to 8 pound.
Hmm.
And you need a medium rod with a very fast tip. And I'm like, are we fishing crappie? Because that's what, it's very much a crappie kind of setup. And he's like, no, it actually works better with your hook set because you're just pulling up. It's not like, with the Texas rig where you're, whipping that thing back and setting that hook. It's just pop. So, that's usually what I got for drop shot. When I moved back to Oklahoma, I actually went up a little bit just because the fish are a little bit bigger here, a little bit more aggressive.
Hmm.
But like a rod is usually a medium heavy with a fast tip, and it, I like 751 gear ratios. That's just kind of what I'm used to, what I like. And there's a lot of, there's so many different ratios for different, cranking. You've got to use this. You've got to use this. I think only for like cranking is when I move up to a cranking rod because I've noticed using my normal setup that I'm comfortable with, that cranking rod, it just does better when you're doing that pop to make sure you set the
Hmm.
hook.
Hmm.
So kind of I don't really follow the here's a Texas rig or this is that rod and this rod. So, but usually have two or three of those, especially in a tournament, if you got to stop and tie, you know, but
Mhm.
you don't have time, that's the thing because you've only got, eight-ish hours. But I
Yep.
have gotten real good at tying real quick, especially going from braid to fluoro. So can figure it out.
Yeah, I've got buddies that they retie. Now they're strictly fishing saltwater tournaments, but they retie their bait every fish. Every fish.
I'll feel it. I'll run my hand because your fingertips are very sensitive. I'll run it,
Yeah.
and if there's any nicks, I'll move up until I don't feel any nicks, and then go a couple inches above it, and then retie. And a lot of guys are running. I got a buddy. He's like, oh, you should only run like 12 feet of fluorocarbon. I'll run 10 yards on it because then I've
Mm,
got plenty of line to cut
to
off.
retie.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't want to have to. That's why probably why those guys got 50 rods on their boats. They're all. I don't have to worry about retying this. I'll just grab another rod.
Are you doing a uni to uni? Are you doing an FG now? What's your connection from main line to braid or main
I
line
believe
to
it's
leader?
the Alberto. I believe it
Okay.
is. So you've got your fluorocarbon, make your loop, run your braid in. You're going up and then back and then through the loop and pulling it tight. I believe it's the Alberto. I like that one. Comfortable with it, and then you just kind of snip your tagline off and go. I will say though, with that, especially where your fluoro is going to your main line there, you got to be real. You got to make sure that's tight, and when you snip it, just leave a little bit and make sure that it's facing down because of your guides. I've bird nested so many times because
Mm,
it'll catch that guide and it doesn't go anywhere and it just spools up.
mm.
So I've been kind of like I'll bend it down and then cut it with toenail clippers because you can put an angle on it, real
Yeah.
nice angle on
Okay.
it. Yep.
Yeah, Danco on their lunar series just came out with some nippers they're just they're like toenail clippers on steroids. They're incredible.
Yeah.
They've got a lanyard you can put on, and I've got a pair in the truck. They're great for when I'm cutting leaders and whatnot. But yeah, dude, there's so much you can get so technical with these tournaments, and for me, it's when it comes to fishing, it's all about confidence baits,
Hmm.
confidence baits. And you're gonna have an array of confidence baits depending on how much time you spend out on the water. And I always start my fishing trips and my tournaments and if I'm fun fishing with those confident baits. And if I'm not getting bit, then it's like, okay, now I gotta dial in. I gotta focus. Because if I'm here to put fish in the boat, I'm gonna be paying attention to what is the life that I'm seeing? What kind of bait is in the water? What are these fish going after? And then my head's on a swivel. Fishing isn't just casting a reel or casting it and chunking some bait and waiting. You are actively looking. You're listening for explosions around you. You're looking around as you're fishing for activity on the surface, for some kind of life or some kind of movement. That looking for these cues can make all the difference in your success. Hey, we're quickly coming to close on this segment. We get back more with Matt Burrows here on the Captain's Log Radio Show. Captain Jonathan Moss. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, welcome back to the Captain's Log Radio. I'm Captain Jonathan Moss. I got a good friend with me today. This is Matt Burrows. Not only is he a friend, he's a client, and he's also a successful bass tournament angler, fishing the circuit up in New Hampshire and then now down in Oklahoma. Matt, I think, all the people I fished with, you're one of the few who I've done both fresh and salt water with. And I don't know what I'm gonna do because your wife had this job where she came down every year for a conference for like 5 days, and you'd call me and be like, "Bro, let's go fishing." and we'd fish all 5 days. I'd loved every second of it. And we'd bounce back and forth. And I remember one day we fished the lagoon and we paused, and I had made a pork butt a couple days before, and we did pork tacos out on the water in between our fishing, the camaraderie there, and that's what fishing's about, the community, getting together, spending time with a buddy, getting out on the water, stalking these fish, catching these fish, making memories, and that's what I love about fishing. When I grow bass fishing, and lately we've been transitioning my kid, my 5-year-old Dieter, dude is an animal. All right. Now, when I have my kids with me, it's always a DOA swim bait with the owner twist lock hooked, rigged weedless, because kids are crazy. And hooks is chuck and duck. They're chucking and I'm ducking, and hooks are going everywhere. So having anything with multiple hooks can be really dangerous and a bit chaotic. But with me, I really, my biggest confidence bait is either that swim bait or a jerk bait. I like throwing those hard plastics. But lately, and I mean, it's like out of the blue. I think it happened because he was talking to my dad. My dad's a big Texas rig plastic worm fisherman. When he goes bass fishing, he's throwing a plastic worm. And he's been talking to my dad about it. And so we get on the water, two of us, he's like, Dad, I want to throw a plastic worm. I was like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't want to do that because fishing slow. You got to fish slow. And you're not, I don't want to say good enough, but you don't have the mental capacity to sit there slow, work a bait, go. He's like, Dad, I want to do it. Dad, I want to do it. Okay, okay, fine, whatever. I'll do it. I'll rig it up. So I rigged this thing up. DOA makes these bass baits. A lot of people don't know that. They think it's just saltwater based, but DOA has different plastic worms, different lengths, different colors. They do their own version of a Cinco. So we had one of these longer plastic worms, watermelon red, and I got a rig, Texas rig, and it's like, all right, here's how you do it. You got to cast out here. You got to work it this way. You got to go slow. You got to do this, you got to that, and yada yada yada. And he's like, all right, I got it. First cast, dude. Freaking first cast. He's like, whoa, 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 I got a bite, dude. I got a bite. And I was like, what? And I look at his line. It's beeline into the left. I was like, set the hook. Set the hook, you going. And he sets the hook, and he's like, all right, well, from now on, all I want to use is a plastic worm, Dad. I was like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
okay. So those are the things that make going fishing just special. And sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, going fishing with my kids can be stressful
Yeah.
because you're fixing things, you're fixing messes, I want a snack. I'm thirsty. My kid fell in the water the other day. My 3-year-old fell in the water. And he's just like, he got like deer in the headlights looking like, oh, and he's wearing a life jacket. He knows how to swim, but he fell off the boat and he's never fallen off the boat before. So these are things that happen. And, as dad, you just want to go fishing.
Mhm.
But it's important that they have those moments where they're clicking, the light bulbs going off, and they're learning, but then they're having fun, and then they're catching fish. You got to have all of that. You know, you sent me a text um, the other day about a little birthday coming up, and you sent me
Yeah.
what you're getting your son. Let's talk about that. Tell me about this whole getting your kid into fishing. What is a successful way to get your kids into fishing?
I will say that the start of taking my kids fishing, like because I'm into it, right? Like I know what to do. I know how to reel it. I know all this stuff. And so my wife reminds, hey, they're just kids, right? They're 10, 11 years old. That's all the life experience they have, right? And so you take fishing into that, they have even less experience.
Yeah.
So for me, I'd get really frustrated. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, I want to catch a fish. And so I've slowed down and I'll fish a little bit and let them fish and help them, teach them. I took my son, Jack, we got a reservoir a few miles up the road. It's for water for the city and stuff, but they have it stocked with bass and
Hmm.
there's flathead catfish in there, which I caught one on a random Rapala gold, like gold shiner or whatever. I was like, oh, that's not a bass. But I took him out there. I was like, hey, let's go fish. I'll set you up here and I just teach him. Here's the knot I like to use. I even know what it's called. Something my mom showed me. We're gonna do tech. I'm gonna set it up just like I would do it, right? Because I know this bait's successful. Because you want them to catch fish, because that's the hook, no pun
Yeah.
intended. But that's what they want
Yeah.
is they want to catch fish. Because I noticed when they're younger, I'd give them, oh, here's a bobber and a hook and a bait. So oh, this is boring. It's not doing anything. So I think that let's give them something they can use because their attention spans are short. So if they're constantly running that bait back to the boat,
Yeah.
right? So I took him out and first same thing, first cast. It's like, and I'm trying to rig up my stuff, and he's like, I got one. I'm like, okay, sure. It's first cast. I'm like, oh, you got one. I was like, set the hook, and just reel. He cut a little, I think it was 3 or 4 pounder, I forget, nice little largemouth. And then we get them off, like, hey, you want to hold it? They're not there yet. I was like, all right, put it back in the water. And he can like casts kind of the same area, made me move over a little bit. I'm still doing my thing. And he's got another one, same size.
That's
So then I
awesome.
do my thing. Yeah, I do my thing and I catch, where I think we caught the same amount of fish. And we're in the truck. He's like, Dad, mine was bigger. I
I
caught the
heard it
bigger
talking
fish.
smack.
Yeah, talking smack, which it's great. And I just to correlate over to, I took him hunting this year, and
Mhm.
there's real nice 13 point out there and in the area we were hunting. And he's like, hey, I know you really want to shoot him, but what happens if he comes out there? I'm like, I don't care. Smoke him. That's your first deer. Am I going to be jealous? Absolutely. Beautiful deer. But I want you to shoot that deer for for the experience, the
Yeah.
enjoyment of that. I think that's what you want for your kids. You want them to enjoy it. And as a parent, you got to get out of your own way,
Yeah.
trying to like, well, it's my turn. I want to catch a fish. I think you got to
Yeah.
do that. When they're older, I think once they learn all these techniques and they're fine tuning them, you can just fish because they already know how to tie the knots,
Yep.
know how to rig everything, and you can enjoy the fishing part together as they get older.
My dad had it made. It was like with every child learning how to fish, there's the struggle bus time.
Hmm.
But I was so into it, still into it, that Fridays, I mentioned the 90s. Friday nights, I mean, on I don't know, ABC or something, they had like TGIF and they had like
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
couple of shows, Full House and Steve Urkel and whatever. And then I'd go straight to the garage. I'd put on country, 90s country, because that was the
Hmm.
newest country, and that's the best country in my opinion. And I would rig all the rods. I'd sharpen all those. I got everything ready. And that was like, I was a little kid. I was a kid, 9, 10, 11 years old. Like, that's all I thought about in school. Just so excited for Friday to get here so I could be in that garage and
Oh
I could
yeah.
work on the thing. And I think I love my job. So hear me correctly. But one thing I miss is that is the anticipation. I'm on the water and I'm not, again, hear me correctly. I'm on the water every day and I'm so thankful for that. I'm so blessed to be able to do that. Having wonderful, incredible clients like yourself to be able to get on people on the water daily is a tremendous blessing. But it's different when you're at work all week and you're thinking about, oh man, I can't wait for this weekend.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
man, I'm gonna smoke them. And I haven't had that since I started being a guide. Um, I still get those moments, but now it's right now our focus with the fun fishing is taking the kids. The wife and I have been talking. I told babe, it's like, let's go. Let's drop the kids off with my parents. Tell them to put on a Disney movie. Let's go to the Wawa. Let's buy a couple of subs.
Oh yeah.
Let's let's just go fishing. Let's just go fishing. That is such a release for me, and I haven't done it in a while. With Captain's Log and the TV show, a lot of my fun fishing time is spent filming and getting out and doing that. So it's hard to have that. But those moments, man, of just the anticipation, the prep. Oh, I love that. I love that, man.
Oh yeah.
Thinking through what baits am I going to use? What zones am I going to go hit? And if this isn't working, let me try this back up, and going to the store and going through the different aisles and finding baits. And even the other day you called me and you're like, bro, I'm at Academy and they got these on sale. You need any? Like, let me know. I'll
yeah.
get them and I'll ship them to you. Or maybe go check out your Academy and see if it's the same deal. I love that, And I even told you I was up visiting my in-laws up in South Dakota. I went to a Shields and they had X-Wraps for like $5, and I bought every stinking one of them, and I was just like having so much fun because I love that anticipation, that prep. Matt, it's so good having you on the show today, man. Talking about tournaments, talking about fishing with your kids, talking about how you dial things in. So there's so much that I've learned from you from fishing, and I'm sure so many people are going to learn from listening to this radio show. If you think you know it all with fishing, you're going to miss fish. There's so much I learn as I'm on the water 200 plus days a year, and there's so much that I learn every time I go out. So I appreciate you being on the show. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge and hanging out with us today, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is Captain Jonathan Moss. This is the Captain's Log Radio Show here on the Outdoor Radio Network. And of course, you can listen to all of our episodes on YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts. So we'll see you guys next time. Captain Jonathan Moss, and this is the Captain's Log Radio Show.
Thanks for listening to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.